There
The
you are.
magic of science. We've done it.
How is everything with you?
I'm good, man. I'm feeling a little yellow today. How
Yeah,
about you?
I'm feeling a bit blue, but it's fine.
You look a little blue. Yes, if we're talking color temperature, that's exactly where you're at.
That's what I was talking about. Anyway, you guys in the Netherlands now? Tilburg tonight? Yes.
Yeah. Yes. We are just out of our minds excited. Third week of the tour, crushing the world one region at a time. And now it's the Netherlands.
Very good. I was watching the Grass Pop stream, and it was really nice set list. But what I enjoyed the most about that streaming was how loud your bass was.
Really?
Yes,
Oh
it
my
was,
God.
but
Don't
loud
tell
good.
me. I appreciate that, man. I pride myself on my bass playing. And so if you can hear it, all the better.
Yeah,
I don't mean to be facetious, but it's a weird thing because when you pile up two loud guitars or more, it's kind of hard to make it read. So if you actually heard my bass without any of the guitars on, it would sound really awful. It's just too much treble and all that. But when you
yeah.
put all that other stuff around it, all of a sudden it kind of sits in the mix and sounds like it belongs there. So I'm glad you noticed that.
I enjoyed because, I'm a big bass fan. For me, when I hear a band, especially metal or rock, I like to hear the bass. And I mean, it's just not the bass of doom, doom, doom. I like to see what the bass is playing because it's such a nice sound, such a nice round, like a lot of body on it, that it's a shame that sometimes I cannot hear any bass on
You
songs.
have you've come to the right place, my friend, because I am a bass fan from way back when, which is what got me into this mess. And I mean, I actually have records back that I recorded, back in the 80s. And I can't even pick out once the producer got his hands on it and mixed it, I can't even pick out what the hell I played. And it's funny because I'll play it for somebody and they'll go, "Oh, that's very different," because it's all an assimilation. But it's all the instruments are important,
Yeah.
all of them. Okay, the glory instruments of the vocal, the guitars, obviously, But to me, I mean, people like you and me, Jorge, it's all about it's that wonderful thing that drew me to playing bass in the first place, and that is that you get a sense of controlling the rhythm. You can kind of lean against the drums or pull back against the drums and give a feel to it, right? And that's very rhythmic. And you can also choose different notes against the chords and the changes that can indicate more power, less power, sadness, anger, all those things. You have all that at your command. So I'm a big bass playing fan. I'm lucky I picked up the instrument because it's really been a delight in my life. And in metal, it tends to sit in one specific place, but I can't help my DNA, so I'm always swinging it.
I appreciate that because, I grew up, listening to Queen, for instance, and John Deacon. He really had a very personified, so to say, bass playing. You can really hear the notes that he was playing. A band like Cream, the bass was always there in your face as well. Obviously, I'm not going to say Motorhead. It's a
It's
different
a different thing, absolutely.
it's a different piece, or Rush with Geddy Lee or even Billy Sheehan, all different approaches how to play bass, but just showing how important and how great a bass can be in a band and not just something sitting in the back doing boom, boom, boom.
Well, I appreciate it. Two things. There's a during COVID when we were locked down, some friends of mine called up and we were all making music together. There's something I did with a small thing called the Echo Bats. Okay, so look for that online. And I actually because it was a very Queen-like song. And I went for a very John Deacon sound and style. So I appreciate what you're saying with that. To me, I don't always need the bass to be like right in everybody's face at all. I think if it contributes where it does, it makes sense. Like you had mentioned Lemmy. I mean, I kind of, it's up front in the mixes on the records and stuff, but I've seen that wonderful cacophony
Yeah.
that is Motorhead. live a few times, and I couldn't tell one instrument from the next because of that, but that's the whole grind of that band, and once Lemmy opened his voice, it made sense why his guitar sounded like that, because that's exactly the way he sung.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a funny instrument, bass, because most people don't notice it's missing until it is, and then they go, "This doesn't feel right."
Yeah, and especially now when you listen to stuff on the phone, or even the headphones, normally they're not as balanced or anything, and sometimes I really have difficulty. I have to pull the bass up. Like, where is the freaking bass? It's also, it's all very high, and I need that warm sound in my face.
So are you gonna tell me, you're gonna disappoint me now and tell me you're a xylophone player?
No, I don't. I don't play.
Oh, you're just a fan.
I'm just a fan. I actually used to play, but guitar. But in the last few, I don't know, 7, 8 years, I became to appreciate the bass sound much more. And I'm just fascinated because I wanted to understand what is the function of the bass, compared to the drums and to the rest of the music. And listening to, different bands, the bass had different function. And I like when the bass has his own life,
Yeah, well, you know what? It can be lyrical, you're right. It can be a lyrical, melodic kind of instrument. Trying to think of somebody who's like that, but it can be both. Some of my favorite, most inspirational, like growing up and listening to the bass and trying to learn how to play it real good and figuring out how to put it into music and songs. If you listen to the late great Dee Murray, who played on Elton John's records, Goodbye Old Brick Road, all that, that was the best blend of melodic and rhythmic that I think I've ever heard in my life. It was so inspirational to me, because as great a pianist as Elton John is and was, as great a drummer as Nigel Olsson was, and great guitar player, I forgot the guitar player's name, I'm sorry about that, but as great as they all were, he really drove a lot of those songs, which is unusual for pop music. So that's one, that's to me, that's like one voice that the instrument can have. And I understand where you're going with this, because there are so many nuances that different bass players add to different bands and different songs. Like, listen to the guy from Tool, for God's sake. He kind of leads that band in a way. That's in odd timing. And that's really interesting stuff. So it's almost limitless. When I started learning how to play bass, it was the 70s, like really, and that was like the bass was the superstar instrument, because it was. They hadn't discovered, like Eddie Van Halen hadn't quite come along yet. And so they didn't have to make the drums bigger, they didn't have to do all that. So a lot of producers relied on, especially on pop music, the bass guitar to do something interesting, to move the music along in certain ways. And I was so blessed to discover the instrument at that time and have so much influence that was there at that time,
And, the Motown, they were really experts in using the bass.
They didn't mean to. I mean, if you actually study all that stuff, I mean, they were all jazz players, right?
Yeah.
So the funny part is, they were like, James Jamerson was dumbing it down. Like, he was trying to make it stupider, but he was such a genius that, he tripped over himself because he couldn't help but play great,
Yeah. And, let's circle back to Megadeth, obviously. When it comes to the set list, normally it's a lot of festivals that you're doing this summer and on this run. Do you have a locked set list, like songs that have to be there on the set, and then you guys change a bit? Because I saw that on Grass Pop, you guys played, put a new song on the set list compared to the other shows. How does that work with Megadeth at this stage?
We've been making a conscious effort to try and try and flip the set list around as much as possible, because there's fans from all age groups and all times of this band. Like, this band's been around for quite some time. I can't show you, but that's 32 songs. So we're trying to shuffle in 32 songs. Now we decide on there's certain ways that we do it. If we've been to a place within a year or so, or 2 years, or even, we try to make sure we don't repeat that set list, which it could be easy to do, because there's I would say on any given night, there's probably 5 songs we have to play.
Yeah.
You know, like people put down the money and they want to hear Sweating Bullets, you know, and they want to hear Hangar 18. So that's already a lot of real estate in the set list, you know. So it's really a trick to try and find something a little unique and maybe pull something out that people wouldn't expect. And that's what we've been working on right now since Teemu came into the band. He's a really fast study, like he learns quick.
Yeah.
And so he's, you know, it's exciting to all of us because we can really jump on stuff that, you know, we talk about playing. We could actually sit. This is actually our rehearsal space back here for the day. Let's see. Yeah.
Cool.
See, there's bars and all that stuff, right? And so we'll come back here and we'll go, okay, let's pull this one off of the list and work on it. And you see how cheeky I'm being because I'm not going to let you know what we're playing. I want to surprise people. Oh, that's a wonderful mandate, and it's an enviable thing for a band to have that many songs that might, you know, because it's funny because sometimes we'll pull one out and we'll go, they're gonna love this one, and then like 20 people in the audience go, I can't believe they're playing, and then you look at everybody else going, I don't know this. But most times it's the eruption of, oh my God, I haven't heard this like in 10 years, you know, 15 years.
Is there any song, you don't have to say the name, obviously, but is there any song that you like particularly from the Megadeth catalog that you haven't played in a while and that you would like to play?
We were actually just talking about, because I haven't played that forever. We were talking about Liar, which is a very fast song, but it's a really thrashy, quick song. And, you know, it's a quick one to pick up. So that might make an appearance soon, but that's one that I really enjoy playing because it just kind of keeps coming at you and you can feel the eyebrows down and the, you know, shoulder forward and the whole thing. So, I mean, that's one. I like the new stuff. You know, one of my favorite songs to play when we do it, we've actually stopped playing it very much because it's been played so many years, is In My Darkest Hour.
Yeah.
Which is one of the songs that, oddly enough, really brought me to Megadeth back in the day. And the funny thing about that is I used to go to a rock club by my house in Brooklyn, New York called L'Amour, which used to be a disco actually used to be a strip club first. And they started doing rock. And all the big bands would come through this part of Brooklyn and play in there. Like the Iron Maiden guys would hang out. You know, anybody that you could think of, like Yngwie Malmsteen, anybody back in that 80s Raven, you know, all those bands, even Megadeth, would come through there. And when I joined Megadeth all those years later, 15, 20 years back from now, I started going through the list and I surprisingly knew very little because I'd been in other bands and playing other music and hadn't really, you know, gotten the catalog down. So as I'm listening to them, all of a sudden I hear In My Darkest Hour and I think, wait a minute, I know this. They used to play at this club L'Amour before the main band would go on, whoever that would be. Let's say if it's Yngwie Malmsteen. Just to let you know, the DJ Alex would always play In My Darkest Hour. This is, because it had this very thematic, broad kind of intro. Right? And that's like, I know this song. You know, oh, that's the L'Amour song. Sure. But I enjoy playing it because I think it holds all the key elements that make Megadeth great. It's got thrash parts. It's got a big, broad crescendo. You know, it's got Dave's beautiful lyrics and emotional lyrics and universal lyrics. People can always understand that feeling of loss and pathos and all that. And I think that's, you know, I think it's a good representation. If you had to say, what does Megadeth sound like? I said, well, you know, here's a good one.
Yeah. For me, it's one of the best Megadeth songs ever. I think that intro, like when you hear it, it gives you goosebumps. You know,
right?
There's something special happening when they start playing. And for me, it's one of those songs that when it starts, you know, you see the start going up.
I still get it on stage sometimes. I really do.
It's awesome. And, you know, you guys are coming back to Portugal. It's be the last show of the tour. Mentions probably some surprises or not, but Are there going to be any surprises since it's the last show of the tour?
Of course. But you got to go to see it.
Yeah, I'm going to be there, and so is everyone. And you mentioned it's your second stint in Megadeth. You've been in, out, you're back again. When you first came to Megadeth, Sean Drover was the drummer. Now you got Dirk. How's been, playing these two different beasts as drummers as well? How is it to play with? I was to play with Sean, and now I is to play with Dirk since he's like an animal, really.
You know what? Sean was a wonderful drummer, and if I go back and look at some of the videos we did, he was really, really great. Dirk is a whole nother thing. Like you say, it's so funny because he's so skinny, I don't know where he gets it from, but Dirk is he's my favorite metal drummer of all time and the best musician who's ever played Mr. Brightside that I've ever heard. So let's look that up. We walk through airports now and, I can't get shot, but they see him and they go, oh, it's Mr. Brightside. There he is.
And, the last record has been released a couple of years ago. Is there any talks about new music yet?
What are you saying? What's the question?
If you guys have been talking about new music, the last record.
Oh yeah, no. We're actively working on music right now. It's in a way, well, it is. It's a new band at this point. It's a new version of Megadeth, as if nobody expected that coming. So. We're talking with Dave every day. Dave really wants to do another record and just get something fresh out there. The last one I thought was great. When I had just joined the band, they just finished recording it. I begged, I pleaded, I said, I know, but could I please play bass on this? Because this few things I had heard were so great, and they were like, "We've been doing this for 2 years. We just have to get on the road. It's done." I was like, "All right, okay." But Steve DiGiorgio did an amazing job. I really love the way he played on this, and I enjoy playing his style, on the sixth. Yeah.
But Steve DiGiorgio is a finger picking bass player. You are a pick player, so
no, I'm as much as finger and all that as everybody else. Yeah, I play pick because Go ahead.
Is it easier? To play with a pick or with the fingers? For you it seems to be indifferent. You can play both anyway, but
yeah, I enjoy playing with my fingers. It's more tactile, and the structure of the note, the fundamental, comes out a lot more clearly. And the way I do that is, I strike the frets as if like a drummer hits the rim, like a rim shot. So everything has an attack to it, but I have to tell you, when I first joined the band the first time, Dave was like, if you wish to play with your fingers, you may. You don't have to, be respectful to whatever. And I tried it for a while, and I was going, it does not sound like Dave Ellison. It doesn't sound like Megadeth, Yeah. And so I had played a lot of in a lot of bands and a lot of studio sessions with a pick, and learning, like I was saying back in the 70s, some of my favorite bass players play with a pick, so I couldn't help but learn that style as well. And like Paul McCartney and Chris Squire and those guys, and on the other side of the coin, Jaco Pastorius and Stanley Clarke, and I can think of a billion others. They both played those different styles. So I kind of tried to do it all, and it helped me, because when I got here, it wasn't like, I wasn't a stranger to doing that. And I knew why the music sounds the way it does. So I think it's kind of wise not to, walk in and go, well, I'm going to do a better version of Megadeth. I mean, Megadeth is what it is. So I respect that. And I think that's the way any musician should approach it.
Very good. And you mentioned Teemu, in the new guitar player, being a fast learner. I know Dave has been very complimentary about him, saying that, comparing him to Marty Friedman that's like the biggest compliment probably anyone can get. But how is to work with Teemu? He seems to be a very nice guy, and he plays, badass guitar player.
He's good. He's young. He's younger than the rest of us, so he keeps us on our toes. But he's really helpful because he's got a we've already walked this journey for a while, Dave and I, and so to have that kind of fresh blood, he's very focused, and it's not contagious because I don't do that, right? But it's good to have somebody there to kind of corral us old guys into the corner and go, okay, let's, I've worked on this. Are we ready to go? It's like, oh, we should work on this now. Okay, let's go. So he has that. He really helped us out because he came to us at a crucial time where, Kiko, who I adore, could not stay with us, due to his family stuff. And that's the most respectful thing I think you can think of is we all have a life. And sometimes, sometimes it's better to have a life and do your stuff the way you're supposed to, do life right. Yeah. I've been in and out of bands my whole life. And let me tell you, man, you leave stuff at home, it's there. It's always there, So when Teemu came along, he was the exact right guy we needed. We need somebody who could just kind of step up and get right in. And he was so crazily prepared. And to this day, I mean, him and I were just working on some music before we started. So it's great sitting down with him and breaking down the things. And he showed me some new technology that really helps me move things ahead that I wasn't aware of. He's on top of all that stuff.
And speaking of technology, obviously, a lot of bands these days use digital, amps, the camper stuff, whatever. How is your setup live? You still prefer to have the amps in the back, getting that wall of sound going through your body? Do you need that? Or
I had this discussion with Billy Sheehan, who I respect immensely. And he said, doesn't, you know what? We embraced new stuff, 30 years ago. New stuff was, transistorized distortion as opposed to tube distortion. Like got off the SVTs and got on the preamps that had, they weren't emulations, but they were FETs that would distort like tubes. And I remember I did that myself. And so he's going, it's all valid if you can get your sound out, so all that's great. I'm still using all the Ashtown gear I've been using for over 20 years because it served me well. It sounds great. It always works. And it's got shoulders, man. It pushes air. And that on these big stages, that's exactly what I need. So I've still got the 8x10s, that I've been using forever. I upgraded some new amplifiers that have an extra 100 watts, and they have those wonderful preamps that I work with. And then I'm always adding a little, let me try this compressor, or let me try this EQ, or let me try something. I'll always add a little something to see if I can improve things. And having said that, I've used Line 6's Helix, which is great. I've used the Neural Quad Cortex. Yeah. And they're fabulous. And I might incorporate some of that into my rig as well, because there's a lot of benefits to having that instant switching and having some things on board. So I'm not a stoic when it comes to, it has to be, the old school stuff. It doesn't. It just has to work.
Yeah. And for me, I ask that because one difference is when you play, obviously, like a festival, you have a big stage, you probably need to have the sound there. But for me, what annoys me sometimes, it's on club shows when bands just use digital stuff. If you're in the front row, you can hear jack shit.
I think that's dreadful. The first time I experienced that was on Gigantor about 12 years ago. And I'm not going to name the band because they're very good friends of mine. They're wonderful people, but they did that. And it's a drum rehearsal, you can't, everybody's on in-ears, you can't even hear the vocal. So it's kind of like, okay, well, I suppose this is all right. And you're right, unless you're, those poor people in the first 5 rows that aren't getting the show, Yeah. The band uses, I know that Dave and Teemu are both using quad cortexes, and they sound great. They really do. But they've got them plugged into amplifiers, into 412 boxes, and they're behind us. All our amps are blowing, man, sometimes a little louder than they should. And then we have side fills just to reinforce all that. So the stage is as live as it can possibly be. Yeah. So anybody who gets those, those first 10 rows, they're actually going to hear a better representation of what we're doing up there than after it gets mixed and sanitized for your protection,
And you said you've been playing for a long time, and you played with a lot of musicians. You played with Zach Wild, you play with X number of artists and bands. One of those bands for me that stuck the most is White Lion. You did 3 records with them. What memories you have from, because White Lion were at the peak when those 3 records that you record with them, they were like top fucking farm, amazing songs. How was that time with you, with the guys of White Lion?
For me, it was a weirdly magical and strange time because I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be part of a band that was on Atlantic Records, Led Zeppelin's label, by the way, and that we'd be touring the world in buses and opening up for AC/DC and Kiss and Aerosmith and all that. The guys in the band, we were all going for the same goal. And it was interesting because the other night I saw Deep Purple, that we played a show with them. And I got to watch them. And before White Line, before all that, for me, like one of the consummate bands was Deep Purple, because they jammed, they had songs, they were every one of them was an amazing player, singer, the whole 9 yards, right? So that was inspirational. When I joined White Lion, it was really funny because I had to learn how to become part of the late 70s, 80s musical movement, which meant a lot more fashion than music. Oddly enough, though, because we had so much talent in Vito and Mike, and it did become more about the music. We were actually lauded more for our musicianship than for our style, which seemed kind of, silly, So anyway, that my memories of it was like being on a freight train really fast. And, the 3 or 4, maybe 5 years that we were together, it went like that. It really did. We went from traveling in buses, staying at hotels. Back then, we had the rabbit ears, on the phone, on the TV, And if you had a cable one, we could see something. We had no idea we were becoming famous because it was all MTV stuff back then.
Yeah.
So I'd call up home, and my parents would be like, "Oh my God, we see you on TV all the time." It's like, how is that possible? It's all the MTV thing. We didn't know. We got back, and it's like, "Here's your gold record. You sold 500,000 copies." It was a different time, man.
Yeah. And you mentioned Deep Purple. I cannot stress how good they are. They are still a great band live. But for me, Made in Japan, after all these years, I mean, it sounds so amazing. It's unbelievable how good the guys were, that night or those nights, whatever. It's one of my favorite records ever, and such great memories from Deep Purple.
Yeah, but what's great? Like a great live record like that, like Made in Japan, you get a real sense just by listening to it of what it was like to be there. You really do. I mean, it's so rare to get it's funny because the big Kiss live record that everybody jumped on.
Yeah.
Everybody was like kind of really young when they jumped on that. But if they realized like most of that crowd was like overdubbed in later on, maybe it wasn't as exciting to be there as it. But it didn't, they had a great career, so God bless them, Yeah. But in the case of Deep Purple and even Cheap Trick later on, it was the same thing. They had a thing. Cheap Trick didn't have the same thing, but they had a very cool thing.
Yeah.
But they played Smoke on the Water.
Yeah.
At the show the other night. And I'm embarrassed to say, but I must say that I kind of got goosebumps. And, that's the song I hear in every music store. Every time you walk in there, kids playing, the 2 notes on Smoke on the Water and stuff like that. But it reminded me of being so young and so impressionable and loving that band so much. Yeah. And I remember the big test was, can we get the drummer just to play the hi-hat at the right time and come in and hit the snare at the right time and, do the additional musician thing that, that intro does. So, yeah, man, that was formidable stuff. And you know what? It's interesting because there's probably a whole generation who just is not aware of this band. And I think that's fine. Things move on.
Yeah.
But you and I.
And you mentioned Kiss Alive. When I found out that the crowd was piped in, that they did a lot of overdubs, it was the end for me. Not the end. I still love Kiss.
Really?
I still love Kiss, but I was also disappointed when I read that. And when you listen to, Made in Japan, and you realize it's a really live band, everything is live there. You appreciate that more, it's just the way it is. But yeah, I was disappointed with Kiss Alive when I realized it was all.
Well, the funny thing about that is, so one of my first bands when I was 11 or 12 years old, we used to practice in my basement. My parents were kind enough to let us do that. And so I had all the neighborhood kids, and we were playing what was on the radio. There was Black Sabbath was new. It wasn't on the radio, but it was new. And so we were doing whatever we could manage, being limited. And Grand Funk Railroad. So these were all like jam bands, and they were all great bands. And I guess we did Smoke on the Water, but that was way before. And then one day, my two guitar players, one was Steve Ogiri, who ended up singing in Journey all those years. Yeah. He's out still doing his thing, right? The other guy's name was Angelo Mancini. They brought me the Kiss record, like the first one. And, there they are on the cover with the makeup and all that stuff. And so they start playing, in the bass. They go, we should do this. Let's do Black Diamond or something like that. And I'm listening to it going, yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's not like Deep Purple cool, but it's cool. Yeah, it seems easy. We'll do it. And so I'm going, it's really cool that they put makeup on for the cover of their record. And they go, no, they wear it all the time, right? And I remember thinking, well, that's dumb. Who wants that? Why would they dress like clowns? But
it made their lives, the best possible life anyway. So,
dude, I love them. I still love them. But that was my impression as a kid, listening to all that complex music and going to
Very good, James. Thank you very much for your time. All the best for the rest of the shows. I'll see you in Lisbon on Sunday.
Yes.
Live festival. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to see you guys again. And hopefully you guys will be back soon after that. So fingers crossed.
Yes, everybody get your tickets for Lisbon, because it's our final show of this tour. So we'll either be so exhausted that it'll be amazing, or we'll be so exhausted that it'll be the coolest thing that we've ever seen. So
James, thank you very much. Have a great day. And I'll see you in Lisbon. All right. Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Bye-bye.